Tigard City Council and Local Contract Review Board and Town Center Development Agency meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Youth Councilor Nog. Here. Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Singh.
Here.
Thank you, everybody. I would actually like to start today with a moment of silence to honor the victims of the senseless gun violence that took place yesterday at Michigan State University. Today, we honor Brian Frazier, Alexandra Verner, and Ariel Anderson. Please join me. Thank you. Please also now stand or mute yourself and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I'd like to see if there are any council or staff, any non-agenda items. I know Councilor Shaw would like to highlight something this weekend.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And for those who are online and in the room, if you have children, there is a Kids Fun Run. There's also a 5K and a 10K event. That's this Saturday, February 18th, and it's the Providence Heart to Start, and it's here in Cook Park. So local and Tigard. So there is still time to register and join the fun. Again, Saturday, February the 18th. Thank you, Mayor.
Ooh, that sounds like fun. Are there any other non-agenda items or topics?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. If you would like to call in now, the call-in number is 503-966-4101, and those wishing to comment should call in now to get into the queue. Anyone present in the room today wanting to comment should sign up for public comment in the back of the room, and we would love to hear from you. For follow-up to previous public comment, today we welcome Assistant City Manager Nyland.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Lube. We did receive 3 written comments at last week's council meeting. One was about safety on our streets, specifically in residential areas. The 2 others were about climate and our environment. In summary, the community members wanted to see action and progress around our bold climate goals and offered some ideas like electrification. All 3 members did receive response and follow-ups. Wanted to take a moment to say happy birthday to the state of Oregon, and thanks for being my date for tonight's Valentine's Day. It's very exciting to spend the evening with you. Some fun facts about Valentine's Day. The first Valentine's Day was in Paris on February 14th in 1400. 250 million roses are grown for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day rates #1 for fresh flower purchases, and 27% of those buying flowers today are women. Americans send over 145 million greeting cards during this holiday, and teachers are the #1 receiver of Valentine's Day cards. And many of us also send cards to our pets. My 3 dogs all received Valentine's Day gifts. Almost half of the annual proposals occur on Valentine's Day. Today is all about love and engagements. And as you get to know me, you will know that I too am about engagement, outreach and engagement specifically. So happy Valentine's Day. Here's to our continued work engaging Tigard. That has a nice ring to it. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from Chamber Board of Directors Chair Michelle Cheney, who is here with us remotely tonight. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Lube, city councilors and guests. My name is Michelle Cheney. I'm chair of the board of the Tigard Chamber, and I am here with the report tonight. I don't have any fun facts, so I'll have to remember that for next time. We are looking for a new CEO for the chamber. We are down to our final selection process and hope to have an announcement soon. Today was our Leadership Tigard Day. Our topic was Government Day, and the city of Tigard was well represented with speakers. We also heard from Northwest Natural, and we went on several tours. For education, advocacy, and building a strong local economy, we do have our DEI committee meeting that meets tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at the chamber office. We are also looking for businesses in Tigard who would like to host students for a workforce development day. This is the event that we're working with Work Ready Initiatives, and we'd love to have any businesses help us with that. As far as promoting community, we had our first Solve Downtown cleanup on February 4th, and we had about a dozen people attend. We would like to double this attendance for the next one, which will be March 4, and that's from 9:30 to noon, and details and registrations can be found on our website. We also are accepting nominations for Tigard Shining Stars, which is our annual event where we recognize outstanding volunteers in the community. We also are offering scholarships for Tualatin and Tigard High School students. This is both to traditional four-year colleges for associate's degrees, and then also for help in learning a trade. So we welcome all of those applicants. Those are both due at in early March, so we'd like to hear from you soon. We do have our annual Bowl-O-Rama, which is always a fun time. That's February 25th at Tigard Bowl. That's in the morning, and we have 2 spots left if we have any businesses that would like to come out and join us for that. Let's see, and then our Shining Stars event is May 5th. Let's see, we've got 2 more Good Morning Tigards events in the month of February. This Thursday, we will hear from Portland Rescue Mission. And then next Thursday, on the 23rd, we have a ribbon cutting at 7:30 in the morning, and that's at Daily Nutrition. And you can find the address on our website as well. And then finally, our Tigard Farmers Market, we opened that on May 7th in the new Universal Plaza. We've got about 35 to 40 vendors scheduled each week, so it should be a really exciting season. There will be live music at all the events, and if you're interested in booking one of our live music events, you would just reach out to our Tigard Chamber Farmers Market manager. And we also have some sponsorship opportunities also for programming at the market. And that is all I have for you. I appreciate the opportunity.
About study.
I think it's certainly possible that could be behind the reason. This is the highest number of vendors that we've had this early in the season. And so we just opened our applications on January 1st and have been really impressed with the turnout. So yeah, that could, the central location could definitely be part of that.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
All right. Next, we will hear from our Tigard High School envoy, Kayla Cum. We'd love to hear about the Tigard High School events and activities coming up.
Hi, thank you for having me, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone. In terms of leadership, at the end of January, the sophomore class put on a winter formal/semi-formal. Everyone had a great time, and we had around 400 students in attendance. Tomorrow, our inter-council committee has planned a second club rush where there's going to be about 30 clubs seeking new members. And on Friday, we have our school-wide Valentine's Assembly. In terms of sports, cheer competed at Tualatin High School's cheer competition a few weekends ago and placed second, which was super exciting. Boys and girls basketball had a doubleheader last Friday. Both teams won. Swim had 3 River Leagues districts last Friday and Saturday and qualified for state. Same with wrestling as well. So they'll be headed to state this weekend. Dance is competing this Saturday at Sherway High School and is preparing to compete at nationals in Anaheim, California next month. Lastly, in terms of sports, official spring sports begin at the end of the month. Tigard Theater had a competition the first weekend of the month as well, where they qualified for state. Also, they're getting ready for their SpongeBob play, which will debut in the new month. In terms of other clubs and extracurricular organizations at Tigard, Ethics Club placed first in the state as well and is competing this Saturday at divisional playoffs against Utah for a spot to go to nationals. In terms of service, a group at Tigard High School called Team Calling a Cure is working to raise $30,000 for LLS, which is the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. They are led by Izzy Pope and Theo Jones, and they've currently raised over $11,000. And lastly, at Tigard High, we're going to have a blood drive in March with the American Red Cross. Thank you for having me.
As usual, y'all sound very busy. Does anybody have any questions for Kayla? All right. Well, thank you so much for spending a portion of your Valentine's with us. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And now we will hear from Police Chief Kathy McAlpine with the Police Chief Update. Chief, thank you for being here.
Thank you all again, Police Chief Kathy McAlpine, for your January dashboard. And if they can pull up the PowerPoint, I'm going to take a little bit of a twist, because if you saw the dashboard, we did have some green, and I want to celebrate the green and talk about something else, which is staffing. So I think we'll have those up there. I'll just start talking. I took a snippet of page 2 on our staffing, and it just shows in patrol how low we are, because we have things like, the number of recruits in the pre-academy. So that's, again, as we're waiting. As you know, we onboarded 2 officers, swore them in for the month of February, and they won't be slated for the academy till June. So how we can onboard them, so we call those the pre-academy. We do have 2 in the academy currently, and then we have 2 that are in recruit training. And then when you look at it, we have 1 military that's almost been 6 months. We have 3 that are on various injuries and light duty, and then we have some on modified, so longer term working light duty. And so that's a total of, out of the 40 some available, we have 34 that are only available to staff all 3 shifts. And then one of the things we're trying to do to not completely deplete patrol is we do have vacancies in our traffic unit. So we're down to 2 motors, and then we have, we're down 1 investigator in criminal investigations, soon to be a second one when Detective Hawken announces his retirement probably in about a week. And so trying to keep patrol afloat, but also it does impact some of our other units as well. Another, to paint the picture, is, again, you often talk about staffing. When do they count against the staffing number? So that's our solo status. And so all of these officers who are in various trainings, we will have, if they are successful, which we hope they will be, we'll have 5 in the course of 2023 that will be in solo status and help. But again, we have 4 vacancies and 2 that we expect retirements on. But those in the pace of, we'll have 1 in March, 1 April, 2 in June, and then 1 in October. So that's kind of the dynamics that we face. Are we gonna be able to get anything, Carol, or I just winging it? Okay, well, I will continue on. The other I'd highlighted is, it's on your last sheet, and that's our DHS referrals. That's all the other things. Thank you. As you can see on the bottom there, I did highlight that because from 2019 it went down. We figured a lot of that was a pandemic, when children were home, people weren't, the referrals, they often come through the school system. And so you can see in 2023, there's 62 of them. So the uptick is, and I confirmed with our investigative unit that is in fact more our youth than, let's say, elderly abuse or concerns that way. A lot of it is everybody's back in school, there's resources there, and we're starting to see those referrals, both from DHS and then, of course, anything through the school system. So just wanted to kind of earmark that as well. And again, you can see that's a kind of a busy graph, but it talks where our staffing is in various stages. The one thing I do want to highlight is, again, as we try and think outside the box for our recruiting, I did send out a personal letter to all of the athletic directors in the state of Washington and Oregon, because that is how I was recruited as an athlete, and appealing to those who may not be thinking or declaring a major. And so within the first 3 days, I got 2 basketball players. I call them my twin towers, 6 feet tall on both of them, from a local university. They came in. One did a ride-along. The others, we're going to help her with an internship to meet her requirements for a class. And those are more long-term recruiting efforts, but we hopefully plant the seed, and when they're making their decisions, that they think of Tigard. And last but not least, if I can go to the second slide, please. I think all of you are aware, but I wanted to highlight it again. We did do a press release. Again, just really highlighting our commercial crimes unit. We did do an organized retail theft blitz, and that was other agencies helped out on there. And you can see the success that we have. This is their pre-meeting event and photo, but we also, it requires uniformed officers as well as the detectives. And we had 14 custodies, 8 lodge, 6 cited, 13 adults, 1 juvenile. The other thing to note that almost all of them had probably fentanyl on their person. So again, we can see that addictive drug and what it has to do with how they are getting their supply is often through thefts. And we cleared 10 warrants and about $4,100 in merchandise. So these are valuable missions, and we go and support other areas, Clackamas County as well, reciprocal, because everybody's looking at this and they're often the same players that move along in our retail stores. So that, again, want to highlight that. That was pretty exciting. And one last story. It's just today, but they're small, but they're meaningful when you impact people's lives. We had an individual purchase a very expensive sewing machine, $2,000 worth sewing machine. And it was being delivered. So the person who was delivering it came from the store, inadvertently left the back open, had to go run and get some keys. Of course, crime of opportunity. They took it out of the car. Our commercial crimes unit was on it just like that, located some information online, was able to meet with the seller at a nearby location. So within about an hour, we recovered that merchandise, was able to give it to the rightful owner, who was extremely grateful. And so that's what makes our day, when we can, somebody's day who's ruined, and be able to rectify it so quickly. It doesn't happen always, but when we do, it's very, very gratifying. And so that was a good story today. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions? Councilor Shaw?
Not necessarily a question, but it's really meaningful to end with that story. So I'm so proud to be part of the Tigard community, and thank you.
Thank you. And I got out of the office, got to go and see that, and then meet with the owner of the property, and like I said, to see her eternally grateful, and the person who had to deliver it, who obviously felt terrible. They were both there and present to be able to really talk to the detectives. So thank you.
Yes, Councilor Wolf.
Chief, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you. Am I echoing there? The strategic thinking, creative thinking around the recruits, around the athletes, and I think it's something to think more broadly about for the city itself. I know that City Manager Reimer and I have talked about that, but I just kudos for thinking about that and bringing in students who could find a career path.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
And we know that a lot of the athletes are very diverse, and so we think we'll get a very diverse pool. And like I said, a lot of times I was so wrapped up in my own sports that I didn't think about the next step. So if I can plant that seed, open a door, it doesn't help us today, but maybe in the long run it'll pay off, and we'll all be in front of you telling you some good stories. Yeah.
Council President, who?
Kudos to, but I don't know if we want to talk more about it, because I don't want other police department to start copying us.
I hesitated.
But just one quick question. You mentioned the traffic enforcement is down to 2 officers. How many do we usually budget for?
At our highest point, we had 4, and then this last year and a half, it's been down to 3, and so we just went down to 2, and that's the lowest we've been. Because they also have the heavy lift of the photo enforcement. So, if we don't have anybody, we utilize light duty to do photo enforcement if they're available, so that does help. But if not, then it falls on the motor officers, and anytime that they're in viewing those, then they're not out high visibility. So I've been talking with the city manager. We have some strategies, but yeah, it does impact our ability to be out there not only with the crashes, but that visible deterrent in the neighborhoods.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any additional questions? My voice today. Councilor Wolf stole my thunder. Thank you for your creativity. A couple of questions as far as, is there anything that we can do to help with the recruitment? And then sort of on the flip side is, once we get, those officers in house, is there anything, and I know we've been talking about this for a long time, with the academy being closed for so long, it's not just us having so much trouble and pushing it out. Is there anything that we can do or push or say or continue to talk about to encourage that process to perhaps move along faster or open up another facility? Because the need is there.
Yes, and I appreciate the question because you all have a very strong voice. We do know, I've heard early on through the legislative process, that DPSST, so the academy, has been funded for 20 classes. That's a little bit higher than it has been, so that's good news. Still not fast enough. The metro area is having meetings to talk about, could we do a satellite? So we want to respect DPSST's curriculum, model it, but perhaps hold some more classes in the Portland, Multnomah County, but there's a lot of us at the table. There's some heavy lifts on that, but would require some legislative change. So we're trying to do the work, and again, be in great partnership with DPSST. There's mixed emotion about going that route, so we want to do all of our due diligence and then hopefully come with a recommendation. So we're trying to be creative on how we can get more people trained, but still honor the training so they're trained correctly. And then on the recruitment side of that, you are our best ambassadors for our own neighborhoods. And I'll steal a little bit of the city manager's update. We swore in one that is a Tigard resident, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. So really in our backyard is always nice too. And just planting seeds, did you think about, have you thought about, and then go explore. So anytime you see somebody who is very gifted in articulation, great customer service, we've done that, where somebody just gave us phenomenal service at a Home Depot or some other retail and said, hey, did you think about, and we actually had them apply. No, I hadn't, but did, based on just their ability to troubleshoot a problem with a customer, and did it in a very professional and kind of great manner. So thank you for asking.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have written public comment. I don't believe we had any written public comment today.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. And City Recorder Krieger, do we have anyone signed up to speak in person?
No, we don't.
Okay. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or requests to comment by video today?
Not at this time.
All right. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and it's used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may also request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Tonight, we have the 99W street lighting contract. And are there any questions or a motion?
No questions, Mayor, but I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Is there any comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted unanimously. All right. So next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the fiscal 2023 second quarter supplemental budget, and I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify by phone or video or in person, please call now to get in the queue. And again, that phone number is 503-966-4101. And Budget Analyst Plath, welcome.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor Lube and members of the council. Kalina Plath, Budget Manager.
And tonight's report is requesting a supplemental budget for the second quarter fiscal year 23 in the total amount of $1,860,480, which spans five separate funds. This request includes a carry forward from a previous year due to continued delays in fleet acquisition, a few new requests, including those funding new federal and local grants, and a fund transfer to increase the CIP tree canopy replacement program. The largest request before you tonight is for the implementation of the Middle Housing Loan Fund, and that provides short-term assistance for housing developments. It was previously approved by the council back in December 21, and it utilizes ARPA funding for its implementation. And then myself and other city staff are available if you have any questions on any of those items.
Thank you so much. I don't believe we've actually received any written comments by noon today on this budget item specifically.
Right, we did not receive any comments.
Thank you.
And no one has signed up to speak.
Okay. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or people on video wishing to give testimony today?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will close the public hearing since there's nothing to respond to. And now council consideration for resolution number 23-02. I open it up for any questions that you may have. Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor Lube. Mayor Lube, just so I understand, so it's on any particular line item on the budget. So Manager Plath, thank you for being here. And my only question, just out of curiosity, is so many of the ARPA funds were grants or forgivable loans. So my question was to better understand the self-sustaining funds of the $1.5 million that are part of the, let me get it right, the community development loans that would be offered up. So thank you.
So for the Middle Housing Loan Fund, what that is it's enough money, the $1.5 million, to give to developers for 2 to 3 developments at a time. And then as they pay those short-term loans back, then that money would be available to the next developer to then loan out again. So that's where the self-sustaining nature of that is.
Yeah, if I could just say that it was also really important for us to do one-time funding, but to use ARPA funds to create programs that are going to last well beyond this initial situation, to be sustaining over time and be a long-term benefit. We talked a lot about that and wanted that far reach as well.
Yeah, kudos to that decision. I think it's great to take those one-time dollars and continue to support. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Are there any additional questions? Or a motion?
I can make a motion. I move to approve resolution number 23-02.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution 23-02, a resolution to adopt a fiscal year 2023 second quarter budget supplemental.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution 23-02 is adopted unanimously. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you. Okay, so now we will convene the Town Center Development Agency. And we are going to be hearing about tax increment financing agency best practices, which is really important as we have 2 districts. So welcome Redevelopment Project Manager Farrelly and TIF District Advisor Elaine Howard.
Good evening, Chair Lube and the directors of the Town Center Development Agency Board. I need to log into my computer to get PowerPoint up.
Technology never works when you need it.
Always technical difficulties. Yeah, we could do it. We would just, oh, there it is. Great. Wanted to prevent the having to say next slide for 60 slides. So yes, tonight we are going to have a session on tax increment financing districts 101, or best practices. And we like to hold these sessions every 3 to 4 years when we have new members of the board. And that is the case. So we invited tonight Elaine Howard from Elaine Howard Consulting, who's one of the foremost experts on Oregon TIF law and practice, with us tonight to go through some slides. And I think you'll learn a lot, even if you're have basic familiarity with TIF districts. So quickly, the roadmap for tonight. We're going to talk about the agency, how it's set up, and relationship between the agency and the TCAC and staff. Why use TIF, do a crash course in TIF 101, and then move on to TIF 201. And then we'll talk about the specifics in the Tiger Triangle and City Center districts, and then leave plenty of time for questions. And it's up to you whether you want to stop us during the presentation and ask questions, or save to the end. We'll leave it up to you.
I think we should stop and ask questions, just because I think there's so many slides that it's probably best to address it in the moment. So please just raise your hand and we can stop. Thank you.
Great. So the TIF agency of the City of Tigard is called the Town Center Development Agency. And just for the people who might be at home, or this is a new concept, it's a legally distinct organization from the City of Tigard. Although obviously very related, as you see, we have many of the same people. City Council serves as the board, and then the executive director of the TCDA is the city manager, Steve Reimer. And then the same city staff, community development director, finance director, city attorney, they all have the same roles. There's also a separate TCDA budget committee, which is made up the same as the city's budget committee. And then the advisory body is the Town Center Advisory Commission. You had a joint meeting with them last week, so I don't need to go into too much detail about them, but they are the advisors to the board. And just really quickly, so you as the elected members of the board, you establish policy, you adopt budgets, you decide on projects, and you make the final decisions. You're responding to the public. TCAC is providing input and recommendations to those decisions. Agency board could go in a different direction if it wishes. The TCAC advises on more global matters, and then details and implementation are staff responsibility. So now I will turn it over to Elaine and her many slides about TIF.
Thank you for having me here tonight.
If you could put the, yep, thank you.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago since I've been here giving an urban renewal. Used to be, now it's called tax increment finance. So if I slip up and say urban renewal from time to time, forgive me. So I have a prepared why use TIF and TIF understanding that I go through, and I am quite comfortable if you want to interrupt me at any point. So one of the basic questions that people have is, why do cities use TIF? They use TIF because you have adopted plans within your city or adopted visions, goals, but you don't have a funding source to implement those. And tax increment financing is a financing tool. So you don't usually, when you adopt a TIF plan, have goals and objectives that are outside of your overall city plans and goals and objectives. It's really taking those goals and objectives and providing a financing tool to make those things happen. Usually your general fund will lack funds to be able to do those specific kinds of projects, and the tax increment financing can provide a funding gap a lot of times on projects where it may not be feasible, but if there's a little bit of extra money put in from another source, it becomes a feasible project. TIF works off of property tax revenues. So we all get our property tax bills in November, and we pay that property tax bill to the county assessor, and the county assessor takes those revenues and distributes them to all the different taxing districts. So those are the city, the county, the school district, and some of the other special districts. Our property taxes in Oregon are limited to 3% increases a year. So even though our real market value of our property may go up more than that, our assessed value, and that's the value on which our property taxes are paid, is limited to increasing at 3% per year, unless you do substantial improvements to your property or unless it's new construction. When a city decides to form an urban renewal agency within, or TIF agency within their city, the property taxes within that area, the increases over the time that that TIF area is established go to that tax increment agency or your town center development agency to do programs, projects, and administration within that area. So those increases are that 3% increase on our property tax bills. It's any new construction that happens. So at the time that the area is established, all the taxing districts continue getting their money off of the value at the time that it was established. As those values increase, the urban renewal agency or the TIF agency receive those increased taxes off of that development. This just shows that concept in a little different chart. It shows that at the time a TIF area is established, the assessor establishes that frozen base assessed value, which is the assessed value of all of the properties within the area at the time. And the taxing districts continue receiving the money off of that frozen base. And just for that tax increment area, so not for the rest of the city, but for that tax increment area, as those values go up, it's called increment, and that increment goes to your town center development agency. You can see on new tax increment areas that increment grows very slowly. That's because it's just that 3% increase typically until you're actually able to start doing projects within the area that will incentivize the new development that causes those jumps in increment over time. So you have the two areas that Sean will go into later. They're in different phases. So one is a mature area that's getting larger amounts of increment. The other's a relatively new area that's on that growth upwards of getting your increment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Excuse me. Is there a standard amount of time that a TIF district is typically like put into place for when it's approved?
We do a lot of new urban renewal TIF plans around the state, and those are typically 25 to 30 years. Duration is not a requirement by ORS 457. ORS 457 is the statute that governs how TIF is used in the state of Oregon. The controlling feature on all of our TIF plans is maximum indebtedness, and we'll go through that. So duration is sometimes like TVFNR, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, on new plans will ask a city to put a duration provision in, and they ask for that because they prefer to know when they might be getting their share of that money back, but it is not a requirement of the statute.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So tax increment financing is used as an economic development tool. It's unique in that it's a financing tool. It's used to address blighting areas across your city. It functions on those increases in property tax revenues, and it's used all over the state. You can see here, this is a couple of years old, but it shows all of the different TIF areas across the state. And within the metropolitan area, most of your neighboring cities have at least one and maybe two TIF areas. Blight is a precondition of any TIF area. Blight is specifically defined in the statute. Blight is defined as, there are a number of different definitions, but typically in the areas that we develop, it is underdevelopment of properties. So if you have properties that don't have any development or don't have the type of development that really should be going on a property, it's poor condition of buildings, buildings that are in need of rehabilitation or repair, and inadequacy of infrastructure. So a lot of TIF plans include new roads, new utilities, new water sewer systems to help promote the development within the area. A TIF area functions off of an income source, and that is that property tax revenue. It has expenses, which are projects, programs, and administration, and it has that spending limit. That spending limit is termed maximum indebtedness. Every TIF plan in Oregon has a maximum indebtedness, and that is calculated at the time you adopt a plan. So it's a number that is projected over a lifetime of the plan of the amount of revenue that we expect you will be able to raise over that lifetime to use on projects and programs within the area. And again, that is the limiting factor of TIF areas in Oregon. One thing that we need to understand about TIF areas is that it is a great tool largely because it helps leverage the amount of money that you can spend within an area. If you just allocate your own city revenues are just a percentage of the total permanent rate property tax revenues. So in this particular example, this is just a generic example, this city tax rate is 34% of the total tax rate. If you form a TIF area, you get those increased revenues for that full 100% of the pie. So the other 66% of that tax rate, you are able to collect to do programs within that TIF area. It is. One of the things that is confusing to property taxpayers in all cities where there is a TIF program is that we tell them TIF doesn't increase their property taxes, but they get a property tax bill that says urban renewal on their property tax bill. And so they say, well, the city's telling us this message that we don't pay increased property taxes for urban renewal, but here it is on my bill. And their reason for that is when measures 47 and 50 passed in 1996, the financing for TIF districts changed in the way that those dollars were collected. So it did used to impact property tax bills. After those two measures passed, the Department of Revenue and the county assessors met and tried to figure out, well, how now do we finance urban renewal in the state? And the way that they decided to do that was a splitting of urban renewal from the regular taxes that the taxing jurisdictions get. So those slides that we talked about earlier, which is the taxing districts just get that frozen base, and now that increase goes to all of the taxing, to the urban renewal tax increment agency. That happened after measures 47 and 50. So the way we try to explain this is on the way the assessor figures out the amount of money that goes to your development agency is it takes that increased value within your area, and it does for every single property, figures out what the difference between the frozen base value was and what the value is at whatever year it is. It adds up that amount of money, and we're just showing here if this was formed this year and next year, the value of that property went from $100,000 to $103,000, so it did that 3% increase that is our property tax limitation, that property tax bill, with or without urban renewal, goes up by $45 just because of our 3% increase. If you have a property without any tax increment financing, then on their property tax bill, there would never be that line item for urban renewal. If you have a property that in a city that has urban renewal or tax increment areas, then there'll be that line item and it'll be that $45, which is that difference. This is just how the assessor calculates the amount. This isn't how it's actually distributed, and the next few slides will go through that. So this just shows with or without urban renewal, this property tax bill went up by $45. The amount is same with or without tax increment areas in that city. So the next few slides are a little confusing. They aren't meant to be able to be understood on your own by just looking at them. But what Scott in my office tried to do is to help people understand what happens between the assessor's determination of how much money your redevelopment agency gets and how that shows up on your tax bill. So the calculation is that first step, and then the assessor distributes that citywide. So it's calculated for the TIF area only. It's actually distributed citywide and then collected and given back to your TIF agency. So this just shows that $45 that we talked about on the tax bill. And in this utopia here, those houses in the blue were the houses that were in the TIF area. So people generally think that those houses then are paying that $45 to your TIF agency. And that's why we do this big red thing to say, no, that's not how it's done. What the assessor does then is say, I have to add up to that total of those 10 houses times $45. But the way I do that is I distribute that by the assessed value of every property in the city. So in this property, all those houses have the same value, just to make it easy for you to understand the concept. And so it distributes that equally to every house. If urban renewal went away, that property tax bill doesn't change. That urban renewal line item goes away, but the tax bill stays the same. The money just gets redistributed back to those other taxing districts. So that's why it's a very difficult concept to explain to people. So if they call and they say, why is this on my property tax bill? I've provided to different cities an explanation of that, and I think that you have one that you can send out to people that helps explain a narrative, just that process that the assessor has to go through to place the burden of that collection of those property tax payments from all the different properties in the city. Questions?
And that's a recalculation every year?
Every year.
Okay. Councilor Shaw?
Thank you. And oftentimes, you're right, we get asked, why are my taxes going up? And they really aren't. If we had that one pager, is that something that we could have access to? Because I know I get asked that quite frequently, and that would be really helpful. Unless, Sean, we just send them to you and you can send them the one pager.
Yeah, I can say that. I know it's on our website, but there is a longer explanation. It's one of the most confusing things to explain.
It is the most confusing thing about tax increment finance, and it's because of our property tax limitation and the way that urban renewal, that's what they called it at that time, had to be distributed to fit under either the $10 per thousand general government, the $5 per thousand for education, and the only way to do that was this method that the Department of Revenue and the assessors figured out. So,
Council President Hu?
Going back to the 3% increase, I know it's not unique to TIF, but when you say substantial improvement, so let's say if we build a new road to a property, even though that's the city property, but the road does connect to the property. Would that consider, no?
No.
Okay,
It's an improvement to the property itself,
okay.
the structure itself. And different assessors use different values for that. So some assessors tell me, well, if it's $25,000 or more, then we will reassess the property, and then they're able to change what that assessed value is. And other assessors say, oh no, I do it at 10,000. So it really depends on the different assessors, what their guideline is for that reassessment.
But quite often a new street will induce new investment in a building, or often a new development that does add to the bottom line of the TIF agency.
So it's indirect, sort of. Okay.
And it will a lot of times cause the real market value to go up. So your property may be worth more because you have a better street or you have better utilities to your property. But the taxes that you pay don't increase because of that.
But if I could, I would say in general, that's also kind of the point of why we do these districts, because a lot of them are in these blighted areas, and doing those fundamental improvements encourages the kind of growth that you're wanting to do with these districts. So it's a very all intertwined kind of thing.
And there are many times where you can do improvements on one property or one business, and then the business next door says, hey, that looks really good. I think maybe we ought to do something too. So it does provide that spin-off benefit of being able to invest within an area and have other property owners decide that they also would like to invest. So just finally on this tax piece is that the impact of tax increment districts is on taxing districts. So that is why they like to be involved in the preparation of new plans. It's why we send them our annual financial statements that you do so that they can understand what that impact is on them, and they can understand when that money might be coming back to their fund so that they can allocate it to their general budgeting processes. They continue receiving money off of that frozen base. They forego the money in the TIF area on the increase in assessed value. And many times that growth would not have occurred but for those investments of urban renewal. So when you do a new plan, you project that these things will happen and that new growth will happen. But that may not happen, and many times would not have happened if you didn't put that road in, you didn't put those utilities in, you didn't improve the water system so that new development could happen. So the use of those tax increment funds a lot of times provides those incentives or abilities for that development to occur. The impact on your local schools is different. The local schools are funded through the state school fund on a per pupil basis. So we looked at that impact directly to the taxing districts. For all the other taxing districts, that's true. For your local school district and for your education service district, the impact is on the state school fund. There are other sources of revenues that go into that state school fund, and your school district does not lose any funding because you have a TIF area within your city. They are funded based on the amount of students that go to school on a daily basis. There are limitations on TIF areas across the state. If you have a population over 50,000, you may have 15% of your assessed value within a TIF area, and you may have 15% of your acreage within an area. Once you have an existing plan, you may not increase it in size by more than 20% of your original plan acreage, and the maximum indebtedness may not increase by more than 20% of your original maximum indebtedness as indexed by inflation, unless you get concurrence with or agreement from taxing districts who levy 75% of the permanent rate levy. That typically is the city, the county, the school district, and the fire district will make up those biggest ones. So if you want to do an increase above that amount, you have to get the agreement of those other taxing districts.
And we went through that process in 2021 when we did the substantial amendment to the city center plan.
So I won't go into all the details on this slide, but to say if you look at the bottom row, you have 6.98% of your assessed value in TIF areas, and you have 9.56% of your acreage, and you're allowed up to 15%. So you're well below both of those statutory limitations. A new plan is adopted requiring public input. It has to go to the agency for review first. An agency sends it out for public review to the taxing districts. The county receives a presentation. You take it to a planning commission for review of conformance to the comprehensive plan. It goes to the city council for a hearing and vote. And in Tigard, you have a vote of your citizens. Not all cities require a vote of citizens. Your charter does. So you cannot form a new TIF area without a vote of your citizens.
And it's an extra step, but the voters have been very much in favor of the districts. Usually pass with 65% for the new districts and for the substantial amendments. So I think it's kind of it's good to get that buy-in from the voters, although it is a lot of extra work.
And now I'm turning it back over to Sean to talk about your two TIF areas, unless you have any questions on the financing part.
Councillor Shaw.
Not necessarily a question, but perhaps a comment. We're going through a charter review now, and I'm assuming since we like to have that opportunity for the citizens to vote, that's something we would potentially want to continue. Maybe not
City
so much a
Attorney
question.
Rahala.
So, Councillor Shaw, you will see the same presentation at your Charter Review Committee, and the committee will get to decide whether it is appropriate to continue to keep that.
Great, thank you, City Attorney.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
So in Tigard, we've got two TIF areas. Tigard Triangle will go first. This is our newer district, formed in 2017, and it's pretty big, 550 acres almost, kind of as big as what is considered to be downtown Portland. Maximum indebtedness is $188 million, 35-year plan, and the we talked about how TIF is slow to develop when you first form it, but it's also a matter of how big the district is and how much the assessed value is, because even though the Tigard Triangle only been in existence for 5 years, it's already surpassed the amount of annual TIF income that the city center has after how many years now? 17 years of the city center. So it really depends on how much assessed value is in the district. So we've issued $8.8 million of debt. We haven't spent all of it, but when we borrow money, that's called issuing debt, and that means we have $179 million of maximum indebtedness remaining to spend on all of the projects in the plan. So I won't read through all of this, but these are the goals that are in the Tigard Triangle plan. But it's about meaningful involvement, multimodal transportation, providing public utility improvements, which is really important in the Triangle. There's at least one area that's unsewered, and lots of roads that are either dirt paths or just nominal roads. Also want to create a fun and diverse place to live, work, shop, and eat, and provide technical and financial assistance to new and existing businesses. I really want to transform that large area that is, has been dominated by sort of big box stores in one area, and then kind of office development, and then all of this kind of older single-family homes that it's been kind of transitioning to other kinds of development over the years. As we've seen, that's kind of where a lot of apartments and mixed-use buildings are being built now. So this is the rough amount of money each project, how much money will be spent on it. This is not meant to be an exact number, but to give the public an idea. So about 42% will be spent on transportation. That includes sidewalks, includes trails, street improvements, and that makes sense because there's a lot of need for that, and those are also very expensive to build. About 14% for public utilities like sewers, public spaces, facilities and installations, 16%. Redevelopment assistance and partnerships, that's assistance to affordable housing or to other mixed-use buildings, and for the matching grant programs that we have. And then 3.7 for project administration and 1 for finance fees. And so we saw the difference in nominal and constant dollars there. So I'll let Elaine explain that if there's any questions. But it's basically over time, you know, inflation.
Councilor Shaw.
Thank you. Redevelopment Project Manager Fairley. To date, $8 million of that total amount has been spent.
Has been borrowed, but
borrowed.
not spent.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's the correct word. Thank you.
And so I'll show a few of the projects in the triangle. Our first expenditure of TIF funds was to support an affordable housing project, the Red Rock Creek Commons. And we've made 2 other awards for affordable housing for projects that we'll be getting under construction later this year. We've also made some development assistance for market rate apartments and mixed use, and those that funding has enabled those projects to do kind of above and beyond what they could have done. I think what the market would have bared, like with the Overland, you know, building that structured parking so that all that parking is inside and not, you know, a big surface parking lot. So for this, moving to the city center, that's our more mature district, approved by the voters in 2006. We've done 2 substantial amendments in 2017 and 2021. The more significant one was in 21, where we added about $20 million to the maximum indebtedness. And that's really important because prior to that, you know, the total budget was $22 million, and that's a very modest budget when you're talking about all the vision that we have for downtown / city center. As you can see, the TIF that's being generated there, about $728,000. So again, the Tiger Triangle is lapping us, but it's mostly because of the smaller area. It's because there is a lot of public land that's contained within the district, Fano Creek Park and the Civic Center campus. So the remaining, we've issued $11.6 million in debt, and the remaining maximum indebtedness is $31.1 million.
So interestingly, the 20% of acreage that you can increase in area, we did increase this area, and we did that in 2017 solely to try to get more money into the area to capture some more of that 3% increase in assessed value. But we were limited to the amount that we could put in, and I think we put in every bit that we could.
Yeah. But yeah, having that, having the voters approve that, that's going to be a big boost to what's capable, the capacity of the district to do more projects. So these are the goals. You know, very similar. Talk about natural resources being an amenity, capitalizing on commuter rail and Fano Creek as catalysts, multimodal transportation, improving streetscapes and public spaces, and we want to be pedestrian friendly, not visually dominated by the automobile, and promoting high quality development of retail, office, residential uses that supported by all the investments we're making. Public space, transportation, recreation, and open space.
Council President Hu.
So just curious about these goals. So are those goals, do those goals have to apply to everything we do, or just with the money, the TIF money okay.
So those are the general goals of the plan. Just kind of what the vision of the plan is, and I think everything that we do, is reflective of those goals. But it's
I think he's talking about citywide.
oh, citywide.
This is just to the area.
Right.
Yeah, and just to the area, and only with the money spent from TIF too. So if we're using money other than TIF money, then we don't have to follow these goals. But we try to be consistent with this goal regardless of the funding source. Is that consistent?
Yeah, I'd say in general, all the projects that we undertake in our city center are, related to those goals. And, as has been mentioned, that TIF isn't always the sole funding source. We also go after a lot of grants, federal, state, metro grants, and that we've actually benefited a lot from that in the district. But I'd say, these goals are pretty overarching and kind of related to all the projects that we undertake. The street and streetscapes projects we're showing here, the Main Street, Green Street Phase 1, and also Burnham Street. And, on Main Street, Green Street in particular, I think that investment that was made really attracted a lot of private investment. Those new businesses moved in, they liked what they saw, and made improvements to their buildings. And then Phase 2 of Main Street, currently under construction, will look very similar to that Phase 1, and we're anticipating the same response, that there'll be new investment in those buildings, new tenants moving into some of the vacant spaces that are in that area. Also, redevelopment assistance. The Atwell was a project from 2017 that benefited from a partnership with the city, and it's been really I think, positive development for downtown to have that many new residents. And anecdotally, I've heard that some businesses have moved to Main Street because of all the new residents that were in downtown. We'd like to see some more of those happen. The lower picture is the alongside senior apartments, and that is in the TIF district as well, although actually no TIF was spent on that project. It was more of the agency was the facilitator and kind of initiator of that partnership with Northwest Housing Alternatives. And then the big one, the public space improvements. In about 2 months, almost tomorrow will be 2 months, we'll have the ribbon cutting for the Universal Plaza. It'll be a major asset for downtown and attract new visitors, attract new development. Interesting to hear that the chamber was saying that they have this is the most interest they've had for the farmers market, because this will be the new home of the farmers market. So very excited about this project.
Mr. Fairley, I'll just add that people are already asking me, and I keep telling them April 15th. So I expect a very large crowd to be there of interested parties.
Yep.
Yep. And they're all ready for the splash pad. So maybe if we could put a request in for a nice warm day, asking now.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll work out. Okay, and then we have a matching grant program that's had a lot of interest, and we've made some, I'd say most of the good-looking buildings on Main Street probably had some grant money in them. So the priorities for the next couple years, this is not an exclusive list, but just the top priorities. In the city center, now that we will have completed the Universal Plaza, we're going to move on to our next public space, which is the Nick Wilson Memorial Plaza. It's a smaller public space, but it'll have a really important connection to the Fanner Creek Trail and access to Fanner Creek. And then redevelopment assistance, and that includes grants. We have increased the amount of money that's available to especially restaurants and drinking establishments, which we know there's a lot of demand for, and that'll be our two areas of focus. Tiger Triangle, kind of larger projects that the Tiger Triangle Street and pedestrian improvements. We have a partnership with REACH, which is a nonprofit developer of affordable housing, and they'll be building some off-site sidewalk improvements that'll connect their residents to the shopping areas of the Tiger Triangle. We also, a grant that you'll hear about next week is the 72nd Avenue. We're going for a grant. It's a very expensive project, but going for a federal grant that would build phase 1 of that from Dartmouth to 99. And the matching funds of that would be provided by TIF if we're successful. Park acquisition, this is something been a major goal for a while. There's a lot of new residents moving into the neighborhood and no parkland. It's not as easy as you'd think, just because everyone has high expectations, shall we say, on what their property is worth. But we do have a couple of possible properties that we are looking really closely at. And then redevelopment assistance. We anticipate another grant application that you'll hear about later and tonight, and then also with our Tiger Triangle Opportunity grants that are getting some interest. So we have a website that has a lot of this information. We have for the city center, we have an interactive map, and play around that, because a little history of all the projects that have been funded by TIF. We should look into getting one done for the Tiger Triangle pretty soon, but that has a lot of information, and there are some documents that we need to add there. We discovered when there was a transition of the old website to the new website, but we'll be getting those up very soon if they're not up already. And we are ready for any additional questions or comments.
I don't see anyone jumping on it, so, yep. Director, I apologize, I'm calling everybody Counselor. Director Singh.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the only question I had was around if you can briefly discuss sort of the unintended consequences of urban renewal or historically, and what Tiger should watch out for in terms of those unintended consequences, as well as what are we doing to sort of mitigate gentrification and displacement of residents.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the Tiger Triangle specifically, one of the first things we did was an equitable implementation strategy, where we worked with many members of the community, partnered with Unite Oregon, and had a 18-month-long process basically of ensuring that the TIF agency, the TIF projects, would benefit the larger community. And the two top projects that they rated were affordable housing and parks. And we've been devoting quite a lot of money to affordable housing, and we see that as a really effective way of assuring everyone can benefit from TIF agencies by building new places that are regulated to have rent that is affordable for people. So we've supported, I believe the number is 200 units of affordable housing that are either built or underway, and we think it's the best way to ensure that that displacement doesn't happen. It is with businesses, it can be an issue because rents may rise as there's more public investment, but we think that the grants that we make available can also address that. And so, we don't want to push anybody out, but we also do want to enact the vision that I think the Tiger voters have, and the Tiger Council and / board of the TCDA has for the two districts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I will ask my question. Knowing that phase 2 of the downtown area is hopefully going to be completed soon. Are we keeping that in mind? Obviously, the redevelopment assistance is a priority for 23 to 25, but are we making a substantial amount available for people who see these streets and now want to update the buildings around it, knowing this is coming? Because my math is correct. You said we've indebted 8 million and we've got, what, 44 available? So it feels like there's a lot of opportunity to invest.
Yeah, we're proposing almost doubling the amount of grant funds that are available next year in both City Center and Triangle.
Excellent. Any additional questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Elaine.
It's always very informative, and it's such an important part of our city, these two districts. Yeah. And we will go to City Manager Reimer for an update.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good evening, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates. Just a few updates first. Thanks to everyone that was here tonight for the multiple items that we had in front of you, and just appreciate the amount of information that they shared with you, as well as bringing forward her first budget supplemental. So thank you for that. It was a very nice job. Just a few quick things. The chief hosted the Chat with Chief last night at Summerfield HOA from 6 to 7. There's 85 people that attended. So when the chief told me that, I'm like, wow, 85. It was such a great conversation and so many questions that they ended up going till 7:45 actually. So as you know about our chief and our PD and all this organization, that engagement that Kathy mentioned is such an important part. This is another great example of being in the community and just talking with them, right, and listening to what they want to share. The chief also mentioned the hiring of our new officer, Officer Justin Rasconi. He was sworn in yesterday. He and his family do live in Tigard, so as we were talking about the recruitment efforts, he graduated from Tualatin High School and attended the Portland Community College, so now he'll also be going to the June Academy that's coming up here not too far off. We mentioned Universal Plaza already, so we've talked about a few times about the 15th. We've solidified the date, and now I think we've even solidified the time of an 11 a.m., so we'll make sure that's on your calendar. So now you can tell people it's on the 15th at 11 a.m. even, so they can start showing up at 10 a.m. to get their spot if it's going to be that full. It's just going to be a great ribbon cutting ceremony, as you know, just many different fun family activities that we'll have going on throughout. So Kenny, the team, Judy, and many others are working on what that day is going to be, but really to symbolize and recognize what that park is all about for our community. So I look forward to that. Speaking of our engagement with our community, our alignment study for the Red Rock Creek Trail continues, and so we have our first listening session in the Tigard Triangle area, and that's tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Red Rock Commons Apartments. And so we'll be meeting with the community to talk about some of the things that you just heard about and how we make sure that we meet our community's needs in that area specifically. We've talked about our teen winter reading in the past from Halstead and team. So to date, our readers have logged over 46,000 pages. So they're updating us, which is pretty amazing that 46,000 pages have been read. And so we continue to, we'll continue to look forward to what we hear from all of them as they work towards some of the prizes that we have available. And then a last thing, we've talked about the Dogs and Tales program starting back up, and we got a great story as our library often shares with us about reading to the, this was a perfect opportunity for this individual's daughter who was struggling with reading, and just a chance for them to read with a therapy dog. It was the only time that she was motivated to read, and she came to enjoy it, which is ultimately the goal, right, of this. Now she will set a timer to read because her parents give her a certain amount of time that she has to read, and then when the timer ends, she keeps reading. And so just another great example of our engagement opportunities and just the different ways that we work with our community. And so very proud of everyone, but obviously the library, and having a program like this that really drew a family in and gave them the tools to find another successful reader. So that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for City Manager Reimer based on his report? Okay. So the Town Center Development Agency is entering into an executive session to discuss real property negotiations under ORS 192.6602E. All discussions are confidential, and those present may disclose nothing from the session. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision. The Town Center Development Agency will adjourn after the executive session. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.